Hello, Trig students. This is lesson 52. We're going to be working on the inviolable argument within trig equations. The first thing you're going to notice that's different on these is that we have something in front of our theta. Sometimes it's x, but a lot of times we're using theta. So we have cosine with a 4 right in front of the theta. Do not think that that can just be divided over to become 1/4, okay? You have a big X there. We cannot do that. Instead, you actually have to solve it, and then at the end of everything, divide it by 4. So we're going to go through an example here where we have to solve 3 theta. Okay, so you're focused in here. Minus 1 equals 0, and we add the 1 over, and then we look on our trig circle, you'll need that handy, to figure out when is it that tangent has a value of 1. And that happens several times, 45, 225, and so forth. And then we would, at the last step, divide that 3 across all of them to get our final answer. All right, so that's just glancing at it. It's going to make a lot more sense when you try one for yourself. Okay, so let's go into some practice questions. The first one is that tangent 3 theta minus 1 equals 0. We were just talking briefly about that. So we're going to first add 1 to the other side. And that brings us to tan 3 theta equals 1. Look on your trig circle for when that happens to take place. Before we do that, I need to mention that our domain setup over here, our limitation was for theta, that it has to be between 0 and 360, but we're actually looking for when it is 3 theta. And that changes things. We have to multiply 360 times 3, okay? Because we have a theta that got multiplied by 3. So 360 times 3 is 1080. That's important because when we go to pull numbers for when tan 3 theta equals 1, we have to go all the way up until 1080. All right, so this is going to happen multiple times. On my unit circle, I look and find that tangent is equal to 1 at 45 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to write down here 3 theta equals 45 degrees. It also happens on that unit circle when it's 225 degrees. Okay, and then my unit circle stops, but I was just told that I have to go up to 1080. So I'm going to go back and add 360 to 45 degrees. Okay, I'm going to add 360. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to add 360 because I have to make it all the way up to 1080. So I'm going to also write that 3 theta equals 405 degrees. And it also, if I add 360, 3 theta equals 585 degrees. But that's still not enough, so I actually have to carry this out one more time. I'm going to add 360 to those solutions that I just got. Okay, and see what that gets me to. So I also find that 3 theta equals, add 360, I have 765 degrees. And over here, if I add 360, that would be 945 degrees. Now I can stop. If I add another 360 to either of those, it's going to hit above 1080. So I now see that I have 6 solutions. I haven't fully solved them yet. I'm now going to go back and divide by 3 on both sides. Okay, for all of those. So I get theta equals 15 degrees. Here, when I divide by 3, I get 135 degrees. When I do 765 divided by 3, I get 255 degrees. And then let me go ahead and highlight those 3 solutions. And let's work over on the right side. Again, dividing by 3 on both sides, so I get theta equals 75 degrees. Here it's 195, and here it's 315. Okay, so I end up with 6 solutions. So none of this math is extremely challenging math, it's just new for you to look at trigonometry this way. Okay, let's go over to this sample question. And I notice on this one that it's actually getting divided by 2 for x. So when I go to rewrite its domain over here, x is divided by 2. Work with me, pencil. Which means I have to divide 360 by 2. And that means we're only going to go up to 180. Okay, so when I go to look on my trig circle, I'm only looking through values up to 180. Let's go ahead and try solving this. So we subtract the root 3 over 2 to the other side. And that produces cosine of x over 2 equals negative root 3 over 2. Then check your unit circle to see when is it that negative root 3 over 2 is a cosine value. You should find 2 solutions. One of those times happens at 150 degrees, and one of those times happens at 210 degrees. However, we can't use this one because it goes outside of the domain that we just talked about. So we're only going to focus in on the 150. To get x by itself, you would multiply both sides by 2, okay, to cancel that out. And that means we'd have x equals 300 degrees. And that's our only solution this time. That's the only one that's going to work within our domain. If we go over to the homework questions, this is going to be starting in question 9. And in your textbook, it's on page 352. So on question 9, we have the cosine 2 theta, is equal to negative 1/2. And it lists for us the domain is given as 0 through 360, just as we did on the other side. So 0 is less than or equal to theta, which is less than 360. And I'm going to note that it's 2 theta. So when I rewrite my domain, if I multiply it by 2, that means I multiply 360 by 2. So I'm going to have to take it up to 720 degrees when I find my solutions. All right. So I look on my trig circle and figure out when is it that cosine is negative 1/2. And I see that it takes place at 120 degrees. So let's write down 2 theta equals 120. And I also see that it takes place at 240. Okay, but we do have to go all the way up to 720. So I'm going to add 360 for each of those to get 2 more solutions. Okay, so for this side, I add 360, and that takes me to 480. And over here, I add 360, and that takes me to 600 degrees. Then I go back and I solve all 4 of those, dividing each side by 2. So this one would come out, theta is 60 degrees. Divide by 2 over here, I get theta is 120 degrees. Divide by 2 down here, that would be 240 degrees. And finally, 300 degrees. So I have 4 solutions that fit within that domain. Going over to question 10, I have tangent 3 theta minus 1 equals 0. All right, this should be identical to the one that we just did for our practice question. That was kind of an accidental. So you can go back to your practice question and just steal your answers from there. All right, that is it for my help on 9 and 10. Good luck.